Mr. Hollow, step aside.
Not without a judicial warrant and proper authorization.
We're federal agents. We don't need permission.
This is a workplace. We have employee protections and protocols you're required to follow.
The standoff happened at 3:15 in the afternoon during peak drive-through rush at a fast food location in Minneapolis. What started as 3 masked ICE agents demanding access to a cashier would escalate into an entire crew of kitchen staff and counter workers forming a human barrier to protect their colleague. A stunning confrontation captured on high-definition security cameras that would go viral within hours, and a federal lawsuit that would ultimately award Helena Santos $13 million while exposing the dangerous intersection of immigration enforcement and everyday workplaces. If you are ready to see institutional racism taken down, like this video and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now, because you won't want to miss tomorrow's story of cops messing with the wrong people and finding out. Let's continue. Helena Santos was 32 years old, a fast food worker who'd been employed at the Minneapolis location for 4 years. She was Brazilian-American, born in Sao Paulo, but brought to the United States as an 8-year-old when her family fled economic instability and uncertainty. She'd grown up in a tight-knit immigrant community in New York, attended public schools, navigated the complexities of a new language and culture, and eventually moved to Minneapolis for work and a fresh start. She'd become a United States citizen through naturalization when she was 21. She had the certificate to prove it, filed safely at home with her passport and social security card. She voted in every election, she paid taxes, she followed every rule. She was exceptional at her job, the kind of employee who consistently ranked highest in speed and accuracy during rush periods. The kind who could manage 3 orders simultaneously without error, who trained new hires with patience and precision, who never complained about difficult customers or impossible timelines. Her techniques were innovative. She developed streamlined sauce mixing protocols that cut prep time by minutes. Her inventory tracking system, quietly implemented during closing shifts, reduced waste and improved efficiency. Other locations heard about her methods and tried to replicate them. Yet her performance reviews were glowing in private and forgotten in public. Her colleagues respected her work, but her innovations went uncelebrated in management meetings. Her suggestions for process improvements were routinely dismissed or credited to others. She'd been passed over for supervisor roles twice, always for reasons that felt vague, always in favor of less qualified staff with shorter tenure and weaker results. She'd been assigned the most grueling overnight shifts. She'd been verbally demeaned for minor errors that others committed without consequence. She'd been docked pay unfairly, her complaints filed and ignored. What her managers didn't know was that Helena held a culinary certification from a prestigious Brazilian institute earned before she'd immigrated. What they didn't know was that she'd spent years quietly studying employment law through online courses and library books, teaching herself the regulations that govern wage theft, workplace harassment, and retaliation. What they didn't know was that she'd been filing anonymous reports with labor authorities for months, documenting violations under a pseudonym, building a quiet case against the systemic abuses she endured daily. She was the classic underdog, humiliated, overlooked, underestimated, possessing quiet strength and unseen expertise that would soon become very visible. The employee entrance slammed open at 3:15 on a Tuesday afternoon. Peak drive-through rush. The restaurant was packed, orders stacked on screens, grills sizzling, fryers beeping. The drive-through line stretched around the building, customers honking, voices shouting into headsets, organized chaos. 3 masked figures entered through the back, ICE agents in tactical vests, their presence immediately wrong in the fluorescent-lit kitchen space. They moved with authority, bypassing protocols, ignoring the staff who froze mid-motion. One agent stepped forward, voice cutting through the noise. Helena Santos. Where is she? Not a question. A demand. Helena stood behind the counter, mid-transaction with a customer at the register. Her hands trembled slightly as she processed their order, the agent's tone registering in her mind, even as her body continued the mechanical work of pressing buttons, accepting payment, printing receipts. The customer glanced between her and the agents, confused, uncertain whether to stay or leave. The lead agent moved closer, flashing an administrative warrant, the paper barely visible before it disappeared back into a vest pocket. An anonymous tip. Undocumented status. Immediate detention. The words came fast, authoritative, designed to overwhelm and intimidate. Helena gripped the counter. Her documents were at home, her passport, her naturalization certificate, her social security card. Everything that proved she belonged here, that she'd earned her place, that she'd followed every rule, all of it locked in a safe 20 minutes away. The agents pushed forward, bypassing front-of-house protocols entirely. Customers in the drive-thru lane honked impatiently, unaware of the confrontation unfolding inside. Staff members exchanged confused glances, uncertain how to respond to federal authority invading their workspace. Patrick Johnson emerged from the back office, a white man in his 40s, manager for 6 years, known for his no-nonsense leadership and unexpected moments of fierce loyalty. He positioned himself between the agents and Helena, his body language shifting into something immovable. "I need to see a judicial warrant, not an administrative one. Judicial." The lead agent's voice hardened. "We don't need your permission. This is a federal matter." Patrick didn't move. "This is a workplace. We have employee protections, customer privacy laws, protocols you're required to follow. You want access to my staff, you get proper authorization." The standoff crystallized, 3 agents on one side, Patrick blocking their path, Helena frozen behind him, processing the reality that her manager was risking obstruction charges to protect her. Then the others began to move. A line cook at the grill set down his spatula and walked to the front. A cashier at the second register stepped away from her station. A prep worker in the back emerged, wiping sauce from gloved hands. A cleaner abandoned her mop, another cook, another cashier, a drive-thru attendant removing her headset. Within 90 seconds, over a dozen bodies in aprons and uniforms had formed a human barrier. Cooks who'd been flipping burgers, cashiers who'd been managing registers, workers who'd been mopping spills and restocking napkins. They stood shoulder to shoulder, arms subtly linked, faces reflecting a cross-racial solidarity that transcended the usual workplace hierarchies. White, black, Latinx, Asian, young and middle-aged, full-time and part-time, united. The lead agent radioed for backup. The others attempted to maneuver around the group, testing for weak points, but the workers adjusted, maintaining the barrier without aggression. Their voices remained calm, their bodies resolute. "We're not moving until you have proper authorization." 28 minutes. The standoff lasted 28 minutes, agents radioing repeatedly, threats of obstruction charges, attempts to push through. The workers holding firm amid the aroma of frying food and the relentless hum of the drive-thru headset. Customers began filming on phones, adding to the chaos. Some left the line. Others stayed, recording everything. Corporate legal representatives arrived first, then local police. The warrant was reviewed under fluorescent lights in the dining area. Administrative. Insufficient for on-site detention during business hours without supervisory approval and proper procedural clearance. The agents retreated with warnings of follow-up action. The door closed behind them. The staff exhaled collectively, the tension breaking like a physical thing. Helena's coworkers surrounded her, hugging her, praising her composure, telling her she was safe now, that they wouldn't let anyone take her. Patrick assured her the company would provide legal support, that human resources was already documenting everything. But Helena wasn't thinking about safety. She was thinking about the humiliation, the assumption, the negligence that allowed federal agents to burst into her workplace and accuse her of being undocumented based on nothing more than an anonymous tip and a name match in a flawed database. Her resolve began to harden, quiet strength transforming into something sharper. This wasn't over. The break room felt smaller than usual. Helena sat at the corner table, still in her uniform, the polyester fabric clinging to her skin from sweat and stress. The afternoon shift continued outside without her, the sounds of the restaurant muffled through the thin walls. Patrick sat across from her, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with corporate while human resources documented everything in meticulous detail. Time, location, agent descriptions, warrant type, witness names. An immigration attorney arrived within 2 hours, a specialist in wrongful detentions, recommended by corporate's legal team. She reviewed the administrative warrant, asked pointed questions, took notes in precise handwriting. Then came the question that lingered beneath everything. Why target a documented citizen? The answer emerged slowly, painfully. The attorney made calls, accessed databases, cross-referenced records. The anonymous tip had matched Helena to another, Helena Santos, from Brazil. Same full name, different person. Her cousin, deported years earlier after a minor traffic stop, escalated into an immigration enforcement action based on expired documentation and miscommunication. A bureaucratic error compounded by family resemblance and shared identity. Helena had never spoken about her cousin to anyone at work. The deportation had fractured their family, creating wounds that never fully healed. She'd been sending money home for years, quiet remittances to support her cousin's children, bearing the pain to focus on her own survival in a country that demanded constant proof of belonging. The mistake was simple. ICE had run the name through outdated databases without verifying social security numbers, employment records, or citizenship status. An anonymous tip plus a name match equaled probable cause in their system. No multi-point verification, no additional checks, just a name and an assumption. The attorney's expression hardened as she reviewed the timeline. This should never have reached your workplace. Multiple safeguards failed. Helena's career began replaying in her mind as she sat in the break room, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. 4 years of patience and precision, training new hires who struggled with the pace, never making them feel inadequate, breaking down complex processes into manageable steps. Implementing her innovations during quiet shifts, the streamlined sauce protocols that saved minutes during rushes, the inventory system that reduced waste, techniques other locations eventually adopted without ever knowing their origin. But the recognition never came. Supervisor positions went to staff with weaker performance records and less tenure. Her suggestions were dismissed in meetings, then quietly implemented and credited to others. She'd endured verbal abuse from district managers who called her just a cashier when she raised concerns about scheduling or pay discrepancies. She'd been assigned overnight shifts as punishment for speaking up, her body clock disrupted for months. And she'd fought back quietly. The employment law courses she'd completed through free online platforms, the library books on wage theft and workplace harassment, the anonymous reports she'd filed with labor authorities under a pseudonym, documenting violations with dates and evidence, building a case that existed somewhere in bureaucratic files, waiting. Management had targeted her for being too vocal, though they'd never confronted her directly. Just subtle retaliation, shift changes, pay docking for minor infractions others committed without consequence, the systematic erosion of respect. That night, a line cook uploaded the security footage. The caption was simple: "This is what real protection looks like." No context, no explanation. Just 28 minutes of masked agents confronting workers in aprons. The video went viral within hours. Labor groups shared it, immigrant advocacy organizations amplified it, news outlets picked it up. By morning, it had been viewed over 2 million times. The comments section became a repository of outrage and solidarity. Former employees of the location flooded in with their own stories. Unfair pay docking, harassment, retaliation, discrimination patterns that stretched back years. The narrative shifted. What began as an immigration enforcement failure became an expose of workplace abuse. The ICE incident was the catalyst, but the toxic management history was the deeper story. Anonymous accounts detailed how Helena had been systematically undermined despite her excellence, how her innovations had been stolen, how her voice had been silenced. Headlines emerged across platforms. Fast food workers block ICE raid in drive-through drama. Viral video exposes flawed immigration databases and racial profiling. Solidarity in action. How co-workers protected colleague from wrongful detention. Public backlash swelled. Educators and service workers nationwide shared similar stories. The groundswell for reform built momentum, connecting individual experiences to systemic failures. Helena watched the footage at home that night, her apartment quiet except for the traffic sounds filtering through thin windows. She saw herself frozen at the register, saw Patrick step forward, saw her coworkers form that human wall, their faces determined, their bodies creating a barrier between her and federal authority. Something shifted. The humiliation transformed into something else. Empowerment, maybe, or just clarity about what came next. She authorized a lawsuit the following morning. Federal civil rights violations, constitutional breaches under the 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendments, emotional distress, punitive damages against ICE and the Department of Homeland Security. Her hidden activism came to light internally as the legal team prepared discovery. The anonymous reports she'd filed, the documentation of wage theft and harassment, the evidence she'd been gathering for months. Patrick learned about it during a deposition prep session, his expression cycling through surprise and something like respect. "You've been building a case this whole time." Helena's response was quiet. Someone had to. Discovery revealed the depth of ICE's negligence. Name-only database checks, ignored verification protocols, racial profiling embedded in anonymous tip systems, agents proceeding without checking social security numbers or employment records that were readily accessible, laziness bordering on malice, enabled by underfunding and a culture that prioritized speed over accuracy. Coworker testimonies highlighted Helena's contributions and the systematic mistreatment she'd endured, the innovations credited to others, the supervisor positions given to less qualified candidates, the verbal abuse and pay docking, years of documented excellence met with sustained neglect. The stage was set for trial. Have you ever witnessed workplace solidarity like this, or felt the sting of being overlooked on the job? Share your thoughts in the comments. Type "Stand together" if you believe in protecting your colleagues, or explain why stories like Helena's inspire change. And don't forget to share this video to spread the word. Helena returned to work 3 days later. Some colleagues treated her with newfound respect, asking questions about the lawsuit, expressing support. Others avoided eye contact, uncomfortable with the attention or their own complicity in the years of silence. But the scars of neglect lingered. 4 years of being dismissed, overlooked, humiliated. Those wounds didn't heal just because a viral video made her visible. Her quiet power was emerging, though. The power of someone who'd endured, documented, and was now ready to fight back through the only system that might deliver accountability. Justice as method, not spectacle. The federal lawsuit unfolded over 8 months. Depositions, discovery, motion hearings, the machinery of civil litigation grinding forward with procedural precision. Then came the trial. 6 weeks in a packed courtroom, journalists filling the gallery, labor activists and former co-workers crowding the benches, supporters drawn by the viral footage that had made Helena's story national news. The evidence was presented methodically, without theatrics. The full security footage played on courtroom monitors. 28 minutes of masked agents confronting workers in a fast food restaurant. The barrier of bodies forming, Patrick's steady refusal, the agent's attempts to maneuver around the group, the workers holding firm, no violence, no aggression, just immovable solidarity. Agent depositions were entered into record, testimonies admitting they'd proceeded without multi-point verification, relying on outdated databases, acting on anonymous tips without cross-referencing social security numbers, employment records, or citizenship documentation that was readily accessible through standard verification channels. The administrative warrant issued based on a name match and nothing more. The negligence was systematic, not individual. Coworker after coworker took the stand, describing the instinctive rally when the agents appeared, Helena's exemplary performance over 4 years, the innovation she'd developed that improved efficiency across the location, the training sessions where she'd patiently guided new hires through complex procedures, the time she'd been passed over for promotions despite glowing performance reviews, the verbal abuse from district management, the unfair pay docking, years of being humiliated and ignored. Expert witnesses testified on constitutional violations, the Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures, the Fifth Amendment due process requirements, the 14th Amendment equal protection guarantees, the chilling effect of workplace immigration raids on labor organizing and worker rights, the systemic ICE failures enabled by chronic underfunding, inadequate training, and a culture that rewarded speed over accuracy. Then Helena took the stand. She recounted the terror of the standoff, standing at the register while masked agents demanded her immediate detention, the trembling in her hands, the knowledge that her documents were locked in a safe at home, unreachable, the humiliation of being accused of undocumented status in front of customers and coworkers, despite having followed every rule, paid every tax, voted in every election since naturalization. She spoke about her pride in becoming a United States citizen at 21. The ceremony, the oath, the belief that citizenship meant belonging, meant protection, meant something more than a certificate in a safe. Then came the bombshell revelations, her cousin's story, the deportation years earlier, the shared name that created the database match, the family fracture that never healed, the quiet remittances she'd been sending home for years to support her cousin's children, the pain she'd buried to survive in a country that demanded constant proof of worthiness, and her secret activism, the employment law courses completed through free platforms, the anonymous reports filed with labor authorities documenting wage theft, harassment, and retaliation, the evidence she'd been gathering for months under a pseudonym, her voice silenced at work, but active in bureaucratic channels, building a case that connected the ICE incident to broader patterns of discrimination and abuse. The courtroom was silent when she finished, the human cost of bureaucratic errors made tangible through one woman's testimony. The defense argued good faith based on limited information, standard procedures followed, agents acting on available data, no malicious intent. But the evidence overwhelmed their arguments. Accessible records that could have prevented the entire incident, verification protocols ignored, racial profiling embedded in anonymous tip systems, negligence that crossed into something darker. The jury deliberated for 3 days, 72 hours of reviewing evidence, testimony, legal instructions. Then they returned. Full liability on all constitutional claims. Fourth Amendment violations for unreasonable detention attempt. Fifth Amendment due process failures. 14th Amendment equal protection breaches. $4 million compensatory damages for emotional distress, reputational harm, lost wages, and the systematic mistreatment that preceded and followed the incident. $9 million punitive damages to punish recklessness and deter future overreach. $13 million total. One of the largest awards in similar immigration enforcement cases. The verdict made immediate headlines. Within hours, ICE announced the firing of the 3 agents involved and the demotion of their supervising officers. Within days, the agency issued new policies requiring mandatory multi-factor verification for all workplace enforcement actions, Social Security number checks, employment record reviews, supervisory approval before on-site detentions, procedural safeguards designed to prevent exactly what had happened to Helena. Fast food workers nationwide began organizing for protections against federal workplace intrusions. Union drives cited Helena's case as evidence of the need for collective bargaining power. Labor defense funds emerged to provide legal support for workers facing similar enforcement actions. Helena used part of the award to establish a labor defense initiative specifically for immigrant workers, partnering with rights groups to develop training programs on workplace protocols, employee rights, and responses to immigration enforcement, creating resources in multiple languages, building networks of attorneys willing to take wrongful detention cases. She continued working at the same location, not because she needed the paycheck anymore, but because leaving felt like admitting defeat. Her co-workers requested her mentorship now. Full sections asking for her training, her innovations finally celebrated in management meetings, her suggestions implemented with proper credit, the excellence that had always existed finally visible. But the recognition was bittersweet. 4 years of being overlooked, dismissed, humiliated. Those scars didn't disappear just because a jury awarded damages or policies changed. The broader impacts unfolded gradually. The Minneapolis location adopted the incident as a mandatory training case for all new hires. A solidarity plaque was installed near the employee entrance, commemorating the day workers stood together against institutional overreach. Other fast food franchises developed similar protocols, recognizing that protecting employees meant protecting the business from liability. Helena spoke at a national labor conference 8 months after the verdict, standing before hundreds of service workers, activists, and organizers, sharing how workplace allyship transformed individual trauma into systemic change, how documentation and persistence created accountability where silence had enabled abuse, how one viral moment connected to decades of labor organizing history. The evening after the conference, she returned to the restaurant for a closing shift, the dining room empty, drive-through window dark. She organized supplies in the storage room with steady hands, the muscle memory of 4 years making the work automatic. Sauce containers aligned, inventory checked, prep stations cleaned for the morning crew. The underdog's triumph wasn't about the money or the headlines. It was about resilience, transforming individual pain into collective gains. About ensuring that the next Helena Santos wouldn't face the same negligence, the same assumptions, the same systematic erasure. It was about workplaces becoming safer, protocols becoming stronger, power being held accountable, justice as method, truth as endurance, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes being underestimated was its own form of power. Until the moment it wasn't.
If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Share this video with someone who would appreciate it, and let's keep building this community together. And before you go, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what stood out to you the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next.